This is one of the Quizalize questions. We have p squared plus p minus 2 divided by p plus 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to get the factors of 2. And we know that the factors of 2 are negative 2 is going to be 1 and negative 2, and it's going to be also 2 and negative 1. And we're going to use 2 and minus 1. So we have p plus 2 times p minus 1 divided by p plus 2. And you notice that these two will cancel, so your answer, all your factors, when you simplify this, it's going to be p minus 1. Okay, the next one will be 3r squared plus 21r over r plus 7. If you look at your numerator, you have a 3 in common, and you also have an r. So what are you left with? R plus 7 divided by r plus 7. These two will become 1. So this will be 3r when simplified. 64n divided by 16n squared plus 24n. So what you have in the numerator is 8 times 8n divided by 8 times 2n squared plus 8 times 3n. So you notice you have the 8 that they have in common. So that's the only thing they had in common. So you have 8n over 2n squared plus 3n. Now in the denominator you can factor an n. So the n's will become 1. So after you do the factoring, you have 8 over 2n plus 3. So that will be your answer after you simplify all this, okay? Once again, we are simplifying this rational, and you notice in the numerator we have 7r that you can factor, and so what you're left with is r plus 1 divided by r plus 1, and you notice that the denominator and the numerator have r plus 1, so what will it be when it's simplified? It will be 7r. So now there's a quite different problem here. We have two rationals and we're multiplying. What you have to do is you need to factor x squared minus x minus 72. So x minus 9 times x plus 8 is what it's going to factor to, over x minus 6 times 1 over x plus 8. So just like we multiply fractions, you're going to multiply the numerator. So what you have, x minus 9 times x plus 8 times 1. So you have x minus 9 times x plus 8 times 1. So that you have x minus 9 over x minus 9 times x plus 8. And then in the denominator, you have x minus 6 times x plus 8. And you notice that x plus 8 and x plus 8 will cancel. So you have x minus 9 divided by x minus 6 as your final simplified version of this problem after you multiply, okay? Once again, we have two rationals. we have n squared minus 18n plus 81 divided by 3n times 1 over n minus 9. What I recommend you do first is I need you to factor, and the only one that you can factor is n squared minus 18n plus 81. So you get the factors of 81, so it's 9 and 9, so it's going to be 9 minus 9 times n minus 9 divided by 3n times 1 over n minus 9. So if you multiply the fractions, you have n minus 9 times 1. So it's n minus 9 times n minus 9 divided by 3n times n minus 9. And you notice in the numerator and the denominator, they have 1 in common. So that's going to become 1. So when you multiply these two rationals, what you have left is n minus 9 over 3n. What we're doing here is we're dividing two rationals. K plus 7 divided by 2k plus 10 divided by 1 over k plus 5. Now, as you know in your the days of when you were adding and subtracting, multiplying fractions, you know when you divide fractions, you're actually going to have to multiply. And you're going to have to give me the reciprocal of this fraction. And the reciprocal of this fraction will be k plus 5 over 1. Now the next step is to go ahead and factor if you can. And you notice that we have 2k plus 10. The common factor is 2, so you have k plus 7 times k plus 5 divided by, you factor a 2, and you're left with k plus 5. K plus 5 and k plus 5, when you divide, is going to be 1. So what are you left with? K plus 7 divided by 2. So the whole key in this process is when you're dividing, you're actually going to have to give me the reciprocal of the second fraction. Once again, we're dividing fractions. Rationals here, we have 2 over n minus 5. Remember what I said about when you're dividing, you're going to have to give me the reciprocal. So we have 2 over 2n minus 14. And since we have 2n minus 14, they have a common factor. So we have 2 over n minus 5 times 2, and we're going to factor a 2. So it's n minus 7. These two cancel. So when we multiply, remember this is going to be a 1. You're left with a 1. So it's going to be 2 times 1, which is 2, divided by n minus 5 times n minus 7.